Hello and welcome to another Lotus 350 video. Today we're going to talk about the differences between the Elise and the Exige. I used to own an Elise for about 3-4 years, put 20,000 miles on the clock. Had this Exige for nearly a year now, about 9,000 miles. So I just want to talk to you about the differences between the two. Not necessarily facts and figures, but what they're actually like from an owner's perspective, what they like to drive behind the wheel. How does it make you feel? What are the differences from the driver's point of view? So you're probably wondering why, when it's so cold outside, is Lotte topless? Well, I'm British and I have a convertible, which means the roof must go off. So overall impressions, Elise versus Exige. Well, it's quite a tricky one because they're so different. In fact, you could have a good case for owning both. Certainly I'd like to. So the Elise is very much more, I think, road biased, much more softer. It doesn't move so much with the cambers of the road. But it's just got a feeling of, in my opinion, just a little bit underpowered. So the chassis is so capable, both the Elise and Exige, but due to the, I guess, I wouldn't say lack of power, but certainly comparably less power than the Exige, it just feels all the time like it's underpowered. I think this has got anti-roll bars at the rear, so it doesn't lean so much in the corners. The Elise, I think, leans quite a lot into the corners. It's got slightly different handling characteristics to it, but definitely different. The Exige from the first 10 seconds feels just that little bit stiffer, a little bit more serious, and everything just feels like you just need to be on the ball a little bit more. It's much more precise versus the Exige, which is versus the Elise, which is much more of a chuckable car, much more of a playful toy versus the more serious, more grown-up Exige.
Okay, so this is library footage of my Elise S, which then later became known as the Sport 220. I obviously don't own the car anymore, so that's why I'm showing you the library footage, so just a quick walk around of the car. In terms of how I would describe it, looking back, I'd say that it taught me how to drive. The chassis is incredibly capable for the amount of power that it has. It always feels like it needs more power. The car would respond playfully to pretty much all your inputs and highlighting sort of any mistakes with feedback. And then it would gently sort of correct, I suppose, and teach you how to do it better next time. So the Elise is like the freshers week of uni. It's a sort of a playful party week when there are little or no consequences. And the Exige is like the graduation. So it's a much more grown-up car that demands a little bit more responsibility, but ultimately is more rewarding.
So let's talk about power. What's the power difference between the Elise and the Exige? Well, on paper, it doesn't really look that much different when you take into account the power and the weight. We'll put the figures down there, the brake horsepower per ton or whatever. But in terms of what it's like behind the wheel, the differences are night and day. The Exige, maybe just for the extra torque, bigger engine, whatever, the Exige just feels like it's in such a different league, such a more powerful car, such a huge difference in actual feel behind the wheel. Forget the numbers, the Exige is another level altogether in terms of power and shunt. So the Elise obviously has a 3.5 litre V6 supercharged engine versus the Elise 1.8 litre supercharged engine. So obviously, as the figures suggest, a lot of torque difference as well. Okay, so let's talk about noise. So, and what I'm talking about specifically is engine and exhaust noise. So in the Elise, when I owned the Elise, it was somewhat lacking. So it was lacking in exhaust tone. Really wanted to put an extra exhaust on, add-on exhaust. I didn't. It was always just a little bit disappointing. Okay, so ownership. What's the Elise like to own versus the Exige? Now, obviously, the Exige has higher running costs. I won't go into that. It's kind of obvious. But in terms of sort of what's it like as, from an owner's perspective, so if we look at the looks, the attention, the Exige gets a lot of attention. Like, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But the Elise kind of got some thumbs up, got a little bit of looks. It's a very pretty, it's a very, sort of attractive car, I suppose. The Exige is very aggressive, and it looks the way it drives. So in conclusion, would I trade my Exige? back for an Elise? Well, unfortunately not. There's this, once you're used to the sound of the Exige and the power of the Exige, it's very, very difficult to go back. But what I would say, as I've said before, is the Elise is a fantastic car.